In the outskirts of Barcelona, where ancient stones whispered tales of centuries past, stood the imposing silhouette of Villa Montserrat. The mansion's weathered facade caught Karim Al-Rahman's attention from the moment his sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the iron gates. As one of the Middle East's most successful real estate developers, Karim had transformed countless historical properties into luxury destinations, but something about this particular estate stirred an unfamiliar sensation in his chest. The real estate agent, Ms. Rodriguez, fumbled with the rusty lock, her manicured fingers struggling with the ancient mechanism. "Mr. Al-Rahman, I must warn you. The property has been abandoned for quite some time. The previous owners left rather abruptly." Karim nodded absently, his keen eyes already assessing the architectural potential. The Mediterranean sun cast long shadows across the overgrown gardens, where marble fountains stood silent among wild roses and untamed vines. Despite its neglected state, the mansion's bones were strong. Classic Spanish colonial architecture with Moorish influences that made his developer's heart race with possibilities. "The price is surprisingly reasonable," Ms. Rodriguez continued, finally pushing open the heavy wooden doors, "especially considering the location and historical significance." The interior was a contradiction of grandeur and decay. Dust motes danced in shafts of light, filtering through dirty windows, illuminating faded frescoes and intricate moldings. Karim's footsteps echoed on the marble floors as he moved from room to room, his mind already sketching out renovations and transformations. This could be the lobby, he mused, standing in the grand entrance hall, and that wing would make perfect boutique suites. His vision was clear. Villa Montserrat would become Barcelona's most exclusive boutique hotel, a haven for discerning travelers seeking authentic Spanish luxury with modern amenities. As they climbed to the upper floors, something caught his attention. Unlike the thick layer of dust covering most surfaces, certain areas seemed disturbed. Recent footprints marked the wooden stairs leading to the attic, and a modern candy wrapper lay crumpled in a corner. "Ms. Rodriguez, has anyone been living here?" Karim asked, his businessman's instinct for detail picking up these anomalies. The agent shook her head emphatically. "Impossible, Mr. Al-Rahman. The property has been sealed since the last owners departed, perhaps some local teenagers breaking in for thrills." But Karim's attention had already shifted to something else, a child's sock, practically new, partially hidden behind a curtain. His unease grew as they reached the top floor. The attic door was slightly ajar, and through the gap he caught a glimpse of what appeared to be a makeshift bed, a pile of blankets carefully arranged in a corner. "I'll take it," he announced suddenly, surprising even himself. The agent's eyes widened at his quick decision, but Karim's instincts had rarely led him astray in business. There was something about this property, something beyond its obvious investment potential, that demanded his attention. Later that evening, after signing the preliminary paperwork and returning to his luxury apartment in central Barcelona, Karim couldn't shake the mansion from his thoughts. The signs of recent habitation nagged at him like an equation that didn't quite balance. His years in business had taught him to trust his intuition when something felt off. Unable to focus on other work, he found himself driving back to Villa Montserrat as twilight painted the sky in deep purples and blues. The security company wouldn't begin their patrols until the following week, so the property stood dark and silent, a looming shadow against the darkening sky. Using the keys he'd received earlier, Karim entered the mansion alone. The empty rooms felt different in the growing darkness, filled with whispers of the past and something else. As he climbed the stairs, his expensive leather shoes making barely a sound on the aged wood, he heard it, a soft whimper from above. His heart raced as he approached the attic door. The sound came again, clearer this time. Definitely human, definitely young. Karim reached for his phone, then hesitated. Something told him this situation required delicacy rather than authorities. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the attic door. The beam from his phone's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene that stopped him in his tracks. In the furthest corner, huddled together on the makeshift bed he'd glimpsed earlier, were two children. A girl, perhaps 10 years old, held a baby protectively in her arms. Her eyes, wide with fear, reflected the flashlight's beam like a trapped animal's. "Please," she whispered in Spanish, her voice trembling, "please don't make us leave. My brother is sick. Karim slowly lowered his phone, softening the harsh light. The girl's face was dirty, her clothes worn but carefully mended. The baby in her arms was too quiet, too still, and even in the dim light, Karim could see the flush of fever on the infant's cheeks. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently in Spanish, remaining by the door to avoid frightening them further. "My name is Karim. I just bought this house. Can you tell me your name?" The girl hesitated, clutching her brother tighter. "Isabella," she finally whispered. "And this is Marco, our mama. She said she'd come back. She promised she'd come back." Karim's mind raced with questions, but the baby's labored breathing demanded immediate action. He needed to help these children, but he also needed to understand why they were hiding in his newly purchased mansion. As he slowly approached them, he realized his plans for Villa Montserrat were about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about business success and what truly matters in life. The drive to Karim's penthouse apartment was tense with unspoken questions. Isabella sat in the back seat, still cradling Marco, her eyes darting between the passing city lights and Karim's reflection in the rearview mirror. The baby's labored breathing filled the car's interior, each whimper making Karim press the accelerator a little harder. "Doctor, Martinez will meet us at my home," Karim said softly, trying to keep his voice calm despite his growing concern. He had called his personal physician the moment they got in the car, pulling every string his wealth and influence could manage to get immediate medical attention. "She's one of Barcelona's best pediatricians." Isabella remained silent, but her grip on Marco loosened slightly. The trust she was showing by even getting into his car was remarkable, though Karim suspected it had more to do with her brother's deteriorating condition than any faith in him personally. The security guard at Karim's building raised an eyebrow at the sight of the disheveled children, but knew better than to question one of the city's most prominent residents. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quick and silent, broken only by Marco's occasional whimpers. Dr. Martinez was already waiting when they arrived, her medical bag ready, and her experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation. "Bring them to the guest room," she directed, taking immediate control of the situation. "The light is better there." The next hour passed in a blur of medical terminology and quiet efficiency. Marco had severe dehydration and malnutrition, complicated by a respiratory infection. Isabella hovered nearby, refusing to leave her brother's side even as Dr. Martinez worked. The girl's own exhaustion was evident in the dark circles under her eyes and the way she swayed slightly when standing still. "The baby needs to be hospitalized," Dr. Martinez declared finally, packing away her stethoscope. Before Isabella could protest, she added, "But given the unusual circumstances, I can provide the necessary care here, Mr. Al-Rahman. I'll need to bring in some equipment and medication, and someone will need to monitor him constantly." "Whatever is needed," Karim replied without hesitation. Money was no object when it came to saving this child's life. He watched as Isabella's shoulders slumped in relief at the news they wouldn't be separated. After Dr. Martinez left with a list of instructions and promises to return in a few hours with supplies, Karim turned his attention to Isabella. "You must be hungry," he said gently. "When was the last time you ate?" Isabella glanced at her sleeping brother before answering. "Yesterday morning we had some bread and a little water." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I tried to make it last, but..." Karim's chest tightened at her words. While he had been planning luxury hotel suites, these children had been starving in his attic. "Maria!" he called to his housekeeper, who had been hovering discreetly nearby. "Could you prepare something light? Some soup, perhaps, and fresh bread." As Maria bustled off to the kitchen, Karim guided Isabella to sit on the plush sofa in his living room, positioning her so she could still see Marco through the guest room's open door. "Isabella," he began carefully, "I need to understand what happened. Where is your mother? Why were you hiding in Villa Montserrat?" The girl's fingers twisted in the hem of her worn shirt. "Mama worked at a bank," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "She was always good with numbers, but then she started acting strange. She would come home crying or stay up all night looking at papers. She said she discovered something bad, something dangerous." Karim leaned forward, his developer's instincts shifting to something more primitive, a desire to protect. "What did she discover?" "I don't know exactly," Isabella admitted, "but one night she woke us up very late. She packed some clothes and her important papers and we left our apartment. She said we needed somewhere safe to hide, somewhere they wouldn't look for us. She knew about the old mansion because... She hesitated, looking uncertain. Because, Karim prompted gently. Because she had seen papers about it at work. She said it was connected to important people, so no one would think to look for us there. She promised she would come back with help, but that was 3 weeks ago. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes. She said it would only be a few days, but she never came back. Maria appeared with a tray of steaming soup and fresh bread, momentarily halting the conversation. Karim watched as Isabella tried to maintain her composure while clearly fighting the urge to devour the food in front of her. Eat slowly, he advised. There's plenty more. As Isabella ate, Karim's mind raced with implications. A bank employee discovering something dangerous enough to send her into hiding. A mansion connected to important people. His real estate instincts, honed over years of high-stakes deals, told him there was much more to this story than a simple property transaction. A soft cry from the guest room drew Isabella's attention immediately. She started to rise, but Karim gently stopped her. Finish eating. I'll check on Marco. As he walked to the guest room, he could feel Isabella's eyes following him, still uncertain, still afraid, but perhaps beginning to hope. Looking down at the feverish baby, Karim made a silent promise. Whatever storm these children's mother had stumbled into, whatever secrets lay hidden in Villa Montserrat's shadows, he would protect them. His plans for a luxury hotel suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the mystery unfolding before him. A mystery that he suspected was about to become far more complex and dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. The following morning dawned with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Marco's condition had stabilized thanks to Dr. Martinez's overnight care, though the baby remained weak. Isabella had finally succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep on the sofa despite her determined efforts to stay awake. Karim had carefully carried her to the second guest room, where she now slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Standing at his floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee in hand, Karim contemplated his next move. His phone had been buzzing with messages about various development projects, but Villa Montserrat now represented something far more complex than a simple renovation project. He needed answers, and he knew exactly where to start looking. "Maria," he called softly to his housekeeper, who was arranging fresh flowers in the living room. "Please watch over the children. I'm going back to the mansion." The morning light transformed Villa Montserrat, its weathered stones glowing warmly in the Spanish sun. Karim moved purposefully through the rooms, this time not looking at their potential for luxury suites, but searching for clues. Isabella's words about her mother's discovery echoed in his mind as he climbed the stairs to the attic. The makeshift living space the children had created told its own story. A small collection of canned food, carefully rationed. A few worn books, presumably to pass the time. But what caught Karim's attention was a loose panel in the wall, partially hidden behind an old armoire. Using his phone's flashlight, he examined the panel more closely. It had been recently disturbed. The dust pattern around its edges was broken. With careful pressure, the panel swung open, revealing a small cavity. Inside lay a metal box, its surface covered in years of dust except for recent fingerprints. The box was locked, but the mechanism was simple enough to open with basic tools from his car. Inside, Karim found a stack of documents, some yellowed with age, others quite recent. As he began to read, his expression grew increasingly grave. The papers detailed a complex web of financial transactions, all centered around Villa Montserrat. Property deeds, bank transfers, and coded correspondence painted a picture of something far more sinister than real estate development. Names of prominent Barcelona citizens appeared throughout, bankers, politicians, and business leaders, all connected through a series of suspicious transactions. One name in particular caught his eye, Abdullah al-Rashid, a fellow Arab businessman known for his aggressive acquisition of historical properties across Europe. According to these documents, al-Rashid wasn't just buying properties. He was using them to move massive amounts of money through a sophisticated laundering operation. A folded note fell from between the pages, written in hurried handwriting. "If you're reading this, I may already be gone. These documents prove everything. Keep them safe. They'll come looking. Sofia Martinez." Sofia Martinez, Isabella's mother. The pieces were starting to fit together. As a bank employee, she must have stumbled upon these records, realizing the magnitude of what she'd discovered. The mansion hadn't been a random choice for hiding. It was the epicenter of the entire operation. Karim's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "The mansion has many secrets, Mr. Al-Rahman. Some should stay buried. Walk away now." His hands tightened on the documents. The threat was clear, but so was his path forward. He couldn't walk away, not with two innocent children depending on him, not with their mother missing, and not with the weight of these revelations pressing on his conscience. Back at his penthouse, Karim found Isabella awake, sitting beside her brother's crib. She looked up as he entered, her eyes immediately going to the box in his hands. "You found Mama's papers," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Karim replied, setting the box down carefully. "Isabella, I need you to tell me everything you remember about your mother's work at the bank. Every detail could be important." As Isabella began to speak, describing her mother's growing anxiety and late-night phone calls, Karim realized he needed professional help. This was beyond his expertise in real estate and business. He needed someone who could navigate the dangerous waters he was entering, someone who could help him protect these children while unraveling the truth behind Villa Montserrat's secrets. He had a friend, a former detective turned private investigator, who specialized in financial crimes. Ricardo Vega was discreet, thorough, and most importantly, incorruptible. As Isabella continued her story, Karim sent a message. "Need your help. Urgent. Matter of life and safety." The reply came almost immediately. "Your place. 1 hour." Looking at Isabella's worried face and Marco's sleeping form, Karim felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had built his fortune transforming old buildings into modern luxuries, but now he faced a different kind of transformation. From a businessman focused on profits to a protector of innocence, caught in a dangerous web of corruption. The sound of a car pulling up outside drew his attention. Through the window, he saw a black SUV with tinted windows parking across the street. The driver remained inside, watching the building. The game was already beginning, and Karim knew the next moves would be critical. The secrets of Villa Montserrat were stirring, and powerful people would do anything to keep them hidden. Ricardo Vega arrived precisely an hour later, his weathered face a mask of professional curiosity. The ex-detective's sharp eyes took in the scene. The anxious child, the sickly baby, and the stack of documents spread across Karim's usually immaculate dining table. "You've stepped into something big, my friend," Ricardo said after Karim had explained the situation. He leafed through the papers, his frown deepening with each page. "This goes beyond simple money laundering. We're looking at a network that's been operating for decades, possibly with connections to international criminal organizations." Isabella, who had been listening quietly from the corner, suddenly spoke up. "Is that why Mama was so scared? Because of bad people?" Ricardo's expression softened as he turned to the girl. "Your mother is very brave, Isabella. She discovered something these people wanted to keep hidden. But don't worry, we're going to do everything we can to find her and keep you safe." Karim nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and apprehension. "What's our next move, Ricardo?" "We need to verify this information and gather more evidence," the investigator replied. "I have contacts in the financial sector who can help us trace some of these transactions. But we need to be careful. If this network is as extensive as it seems, we don't know who we can trust." As they discussed strategy, Karim's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Final warning, Mr. Al-Rahman. The children can disappear as easily as their mother. Walk away now." Karim's jaw clenched as he showed the message to Ricardo. The investigator's eyes narrowed. "They're watching us. We need to move the children to a safer location." "I have a property outside the city," Karim offered. "A small villa in the countryside. It's secluded and secure." Ricardo nodded approvingly. "Good. I'll arrange for a trusted associate to stay with them. In the meantime, we need to dig deeper into Villa Montserrat's history. The mansion is clearly central to this operation." As they prepared to move the children, Karim noticed Isabella's worried glances towards the window. The black SUV was still parked across the street, a silent reminder of the danger they faced. "It's okay," he assured her, kneeling down to her level. "We're going to a safe place, a beautiful house in the countryside where you and Marco can rest and get better. Can you be brave for me?" Isabella nodded, her small hand gripping Karim's tightly. "Will you come with us?" Karim felt a pang in his chest. He had known these children for barely a day, yet he already felt fiercely protective of them. "I'll visit as often as I can," he promised. "But right now I need to stay here and work with Ricardo to find your mother and make things safe for all of you." As Ricardo made arrangements for the children's transportation, Karim packed essentials and contacted Dr. Martinez to ensure Marco's continued care. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. He was no longer just a successful businessman, but a guardian entrusted with 2 young lives. Once the children were safely on their way to the countryside villa, Karim and Ricardo returned their focus to the investigation. "We need to return to Villa Montserrat," Ricardo declared. "If there are more hidden compartments like the one you found, we might uncover additional evidence." As they drove towards the mansion, Karim couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. The streets of Barcelona seemed different now, filled with potential threats and hidden dangers. The city he had called home for years had transformed overnight into a labyrinth of secrets and shadows. At Villa Montserrat, they began a methodical search, looking for any signs of hidden spaces or concealed documents. As they worked, Ricardo shared his initial findings from his contacts. The bank where Sofia Martinez worked has been flagged for suspicious activities before, but investigations always seem to hit dead ends. Now we know why. The protection goes high up. Their search was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. Through a dusty window, they watched as a sleek Mercedes pulled up to the gates. 2 men in expensive suits emerged, their body language screaming enforcers rather than businessmen. "We've got company," Ricardo muttered, pulling Karim away from the window. "Looks like someone doesn't appreciate our interest in this place." They retreated to the back of the mansion, slipping out through a service entrance just as they heard the front door being forced open. As they made their escape, Karim caught a glimpse of a familiar face, Abdullah al-Rashid himself directing his men with sharp gestures. Back in the safety of Karim's car, Ricardo's expression was grim. "This confirms it. Al-Rashid is directly involved. We're dealing with some very powerful, very dangerous people." Karim gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind racing. He had entered this situation looking for a business opportunity, but now found himself embroiled in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The lives of 2 innocent children hung in the balance, along with the fate of their missing mother. As they drove back into the heart of Barcelona, Karim made a silent vow. He would see this through, no matter the cost. Villa Montserrat's secrets were unraveling, and with them the comfortable life he had known. But in their place, he had found a purpose greater than any business deal, a chance to right wrongs and protect the vulnerable. The sun was setting over the city as Karim and Ricardo began to plan their next move. The shadows were lengthening, but within them the first glimmers of truth were beginning to shine through. The real battle was just beginning, and Karim al-Rahman was ready to fight. The following days passed in a blur of clandestine meetings and late-night research sessions. Karim's penthouse had been transformed into an impromptu command center, with Ricardo's trusted team working around the clock to unravel the complex web of corruption centered around Villa Montserrat. Karim split his time between overseeing the investigation and making frequent trips to the countryside villa to check on Isabella and Marco. The children were slowly recovering under Dr. Martinez's care, but Isabella's worried eyes followed Karim every time he prepared to leave. "Any news about Mama?" she would ask, her voice small but hopeful. "Not yet, sweetheart," Karim would reply, his heart heavy. "But we're getting closer, I promise." Back in Barcelona, the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. Ricardo's financial contacts had traced a series of transactions linking Villa Montserrat to offshore accounts controlled by Abdullah al-Rashid and his associates. The mansion, it seemed, was more than just a historical property. It was a key node in a vast money laundering network. "We've uncovered something interesting," Ricardo announced one evening, spreading out a series of old photographs on the dining table. "These were taken during the Spanish Civil War. Look at this one." Karim leaned in, examining a faded black and white image of Villa Montserrat. In the foreground, a group of men in military uniforms stood proudly. One face in particular caught his attention, a man who bore a striking resemblance to Abdullah al-Rashid. Al-Rashid's grandfather, Ricardo explained. He was a wealthy arms dealer who supplied weapons to both sides during the war. Villa Montserrat was his base of operations. So the mansion's history of illicit activities goes back generations, Karim mused, a chill running down his spine. Ricardo nodded grimly. The current operation is just the latest chapter in a long legacy of corruption. But here's where it gets interesting. Look at this. He pointed to another figure in the photograph, partially obscured in the background. We believe this is Sofia Martinez's grandfather. He worked as an accountant for Al-Rashid's grandfather. The implications were staggering. So Sofia didn't stumble upon this by accident, Karim realized. She was investigating her own family's history. As they delved deeper into the historical connections, a pattern emerged. The families of those involved in the current money laundering scheme had been intertwined for generations, their fortunes built on a foundation of secrets and illegal activities. Meanwhile, the pressure from Al-Rashid and his associates was intensifying. Karim's legitimate business deals were suddenly facing unexpected obstacles. Building permits were denied, contracts mysteriously fell through, and he found himself under increased scrutiny from tax authorities. They're trying to squeeze you out, Ricardo warned, make you desperate enough to back off. But Karim remained resolute. The more he learned about the depth of the corruption, the more determined he became to see justice done. He thought of Isabella and Marco, of their missing mother, who had risked everything to expose the truth. One afternoon, as Karim was poring over financial records, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Mr. Al-Rahman, a distorted voice greeted him. You've been asking a lot of questions about Villa Montserrat. Perhaps it's time we had a conversation. Karim's pulse quickened. Who is this? Let's just say I'm someone with answers you're seeking. Meet me at the Café de l'Opéra in 1 hour. Come alone. The line went dead. Karim immediately called Ricardo, who advised against going. It's too risky, the investigator argued. It could be a trap. But Karim saw an opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. I'll be careful, he promised, but if there's any chance this person has information about Sofia or the wider operation, we have to take it. An hour later, Karim found himself seated at a corner table in the ornate Café de l'Opéra, his eyes scanning the crowded room for any sign of his mysterious contact. The café buzzed with the chatter of tourists and locals, providing perfect cover for a clandestine meeting. Just as Karim was beginning to think he'd been stood up, an elegantly dressed older woman slid into the seat across from him. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied him intently. Mr. Al-Rahman, she said softly, I'm glad you came. My name is Carmen Vidal. I used to work for the Martinez family many years ago. Karim leaned forward, his voice low. You have information about Sofia? Carmen nodded, her expression grave. Sofia isn't the first Martinez to try to expose the truth about Villa Montserrat. Her grandfather attempted the same, decades ago. He disappeared, just like Sofia has. As Carmen began to unfold a tale of generational secrets and long-buried truths, Karim realized they had only scratched the surface of the Villa Montserrat mystery. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and the echoes of the past were about to collide with the present in ways that would shake Barcelona's power structures to their very core. Carmen's revelations left Karim reeling. The elderly woman spoke in hushed tones, her eyes constantly scanning the café for any sign of unwanted attention. The Martinez family has been keepers of Villa Montserrat's secrets for generations, she explained. Sofia's grandfather, Eduardo, was more than just an accountant. He was a covert operative, tasked with documenting the illegal activities centered around the mansion. Karim leaned in, his coffee forgotten. But why didn't he expose them? Carmen's face darkened. He tried, but the network was too powerful, too entrenched. Eduardo disappeared, leaving behind only a cryptic message for his family. Sofia found that message years later, hidden in an old family Bible. As Carmen continued her tale, piecing together decades of secrets and lies, Karim's mind raced. The scope of the conspiracy was far greater than they had imagined. Villa Montserrat wasn't just a hub for money laundering. It was the centerpiece of a vast, multi-generational criminal empire that had shaped Barcelona's economic and political landscape for nearly a century. Sofia realized that the key to unraveling everything lay hidden somewhere in the mansion, Carmen concluded. That's why she hid there with her children. She was searching for her grandfather's final evidence. Karim's phone buzzed, a message from Ricardo. We've got a lead on Sofia. Meet me at the office ASAP. Thanking Carmen and arranging a secure way to contact her again, Karim rushed to Ricardo's small, cluttered office in the Gothic quarter. The ex-detective's face was grim as he played a CCTV footage on his computer. "This was taken 3 days ago at a private airfield outside the city," Ricardo explained. The grainy video showed a woman being escorted onto a small private jet. Even from a distance, Karim recognized Sofia Martinez. "Where were they taking her?" Karim demanded. Ricardo shook his head. "The jet's flight plan listed a destination in Morocco, but we have no way to verify if that's where they actually went. However, we did identify one of the men with her." He pulled up another image, this one crystal clear. "Meet Jorge Salazar, Al-Rashid's right-hand man and chief enforcer." Karim's fists clenched. Seeing Sofia alive was a relief, but knowing she was in the hands of such dangerous people filled him with dread. "We need to find her, Ricardo, fast." "I'm working on it," Ricardo assured him, "but we need to be careful. Al-Rashid's people are everywhere. In fact," he hesitated, then continued, "I have reason to believe there might be a leak in the police department. Some of our moves have been anticipated too quickly." The implication was clear. Their investigation had been compromised. Karim thought of Isabella and Marco, safely hidden in the countryside villa. "We need to move the children again," he decided, "somewhere completely off the grid." As they discussed options, Karim's phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez, her voice tinged with panic. "Mr. Al-Rahman, you need to come to the villa immediately. There's been an incident." Karim's blood ran cold. He and Ricardo raced to the countryside, breaking every speed limit along the way. As they approached the villa, they saw smoke rising in the distance. Karim's heart pounded as they turned the final corner, revealing the villa's charred remains. "Doctor." Martinez met them at the gate, her face smudged with soot. "It was a professional job," she reported grimly. "They came in fast, took the children, and set the fire to cover their tracks." Karim felt the world spinning around him. Isabella and Marco, those innocent children he had sworn to protect, were now in the hands of the very people who had taken their mother. The stakes had just become devastatingly personal. As fire trucks and police cars began to arrive, Ricardo pulled Karim aside. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "We can't trust official channels anymore. From now on, we're on our own." Karim nodded, a cold determination settling over him. He was no longer just a businessman caught up in a mystery. He was now a man on a mission, fighting against a powerful and ruthless enemy to save 3 innocent lives. Back in Barcelona, as night fell over the city, Karim stood at his penthouse window, looking out at the twinkling lights. Somewhere out there, Sofia and her children were being held by people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Villa Montserrat loomed in his mind, a silent sentinel holding the key to it all. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "The children are safe, for now. Villa Montserrat holds the answers. You have 48 hours to deliver Eduardo Martinez's evidence, or the Martinez family will disappear forever." Karim's jaw set in grim determination. The final countdown had begun. With Ricardo by his side, and Carmen's historical knowledge, he had to unravel nearly a century of secrets hidden within Villa Montserrat's walls. The fate of Sofia and her children hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. As he turned from the window, Karim caught his reflection in the glass. The man staring back at him was no longer the carefree real estate mogul of a few weeks ago. He was a man transformed by circumstance, ready to dive into the shadows of Barcelona's underworld, to bring light to long-buried truths and save those who now depended on him. The game was reaching its climax, and Karim Al-Rahman was ready to make his final move. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of frantic activity. Karim, Ricardo, and Carmen formed an unlikely trio, pooling their resources and knowledge in a desperate race to uncover the secrets of Villa Montserrat before time ran out for the Martinez family. They returned to the mansion under the cover of darkness, this time armed with Carmen's historical insights and Ricardo's investigative expertise. The grand old building seemed to loom over them, its secrets buried deep within its weathered stones. Eduardo's message mentioned a hidden room, Carmen whispered as they carefully made their way through the dusty corridors. Something about where the sun sets behind the lion's mane. Ricardo's flashlight beam played across the faded frescoes adorning the walls. "There," he pointed suddenly. "That painting of the sunset. And look at the frame." Karim stepped closer, examining the ornate golden frame. Intricate carvings of lions' heads decorated each corner, their manes flowing into the baroque swirls of the design. With trembling fingers, he pressed the eye of the lion in the bottom right corner. A soft click echoed through the silent hall, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passageway. The trio exchanged glances of mingled excitement and apprehension before stepping into the darkness beyond. The hidden room was small, barely larger than a closet, but every available surface was covered in documents, photographs, and maps. Decades of carefully gathered evidence lay before them, documenting a web of corruption that stretched from the Spanish Civil War to the present day. "This is it," Ricardo breathed, his eyes wide as he scanned the treasure trove of information. This is enough to bring down the entire network. But as they began to sift through the documents, Karim's phone buzzed with another message from the kidnappers. "Time's running out, Mr. Al-Rahman. Proof of life attached." The attached photo showed Sofia, Isabella, and Marco huddled together in a bare room. They were alive, but fear was evident in their eyes. The sight steeled Karim's resolve. They had the evidence, but how could they use it to ensure the family's safe return? It was Carmen who provided the breakthrough. "Look at this," she said, holding up an old ledger. Eduardo kept records of every transaction, every player in the network, including fail-safes and leverage points for each key figure. Karim's mind raced. "So we don't just have evidence of crimes. We have the means to turn members of the network against each other." Ricardo nodded grimly. "It's a house of cards. If we apply pressure in the right places, the whole thing could come tumbling down." With only hours left before the deadline, they formulated a daring plan. Using the information from Eduardo's records, they began reaching out to key figures in the network, offering them a choice: cooperate in bringing down Al-Rashid and his inner circle, or face exposure and ruin. The response was immediate and chaotic. Long-standing alliances fractured as self-preservation instincts kicked in. Karim's phone buzzed constantly with messages from panicked businessmen and politicians, all eager to save themselves. As dawn broke over Barcelona, Karim received a call from an unexpected ally, the chief of police himself, whose name had appeared in Eduardo's ledger. "We're moving in on Al-Rashid's compound," he informed Karim. "Your information was the key we needed. But be careful. Salazar and a few others are still unaccounted for." Karim, Ricardo, and Carmen raced to the location provided by the police. As they approached, they could hear the sounds of an operation in progress. Sirens wailing, orders being shouted. But Karim's focus was solely on finding Sofia and the children. Amidst the chaos, a figure darted out of a side door of the compound. Jorge Salazar, Al-Rashid's enforcer, pulling a struggling Sofia behind him. Without hesitation, Karim gave chase, his heart pounding as he weaved through the pandemonium. He cornered Salazar in a narrow alley, the man's face a mask of desperation as he held Sofia hostage. "It's over, Salazar," Karim called out, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "Let her go. There's nowhere left to run." For a tense moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a snarl of defeat, Salazar released Sofia and raised his hands. As the police swarmed in to make the arrest, Karim rushed to Sofia, enveloping her in a protective embrace. "The children!" she gasped, her eyes wild with fear and hope. "Where are my children?" Before Karim could respond, a joyous cry rang out. "Mama!" Isabella's voice cut through the noise, and suddenly the little girl was there, Marco in her arms, both safe and sound. As the Martinez family reunited in a tearful embrace, Karim felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The nightmare was over. Villa Montserrat's secrets had finally been brought to light, and those who had profited from decades of corruption would face justice. In the days that followed, Barcelona was rocked by the revelations. Arrests were made, resignations tendered, and a long process of untangling the web of deceit began. But for Karim, the most important outcome was the safety of Sofia, Isabella, and Marco. As he watched the family begin to heal, surrounded by the comfort and security of his penthouse, Karim realized that his life had been irrevocably changed. What had begun as a simple real estate venture had become a journey of redemption, justice, and unexpected connections. Villa Montserrat stood empty now, its shadows finally dispelled. But as Karim looked to the future, he knew that the old mansion's true legacy would be the lives it had brought together and the truths it had finally revealed. In the weeks following the dramatic takedown of al-Rashid's network, Barcelona buzzed with a mixture of shock, outrage, and cautious hope. The exposure of such deep-rooted corruption had shaken the city to its core, but there was also a sense of catharsis, a chance for renewal and redemption. Karim found himself at the center of a media storm. Journalists clamored for interviews, hailing him as a hero who had risked everything to bring truth to light. But he deflected much of the attention, insisting that the real heroes were Sofia Martinez and her grandfather Eduardo, who had sacrificed so much in their quest for justice. As the dust began to settle, Karim turned his focus to the future, both his own and that of the Martinez family. Sofia, Isabella, and Marco remained under his protection, slowly healing from their ordeal. The bond that had formed between them during the crisis only grew stronger with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, as they sat in the penthouse's spacious living room, Sofia broached a subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Karim," she began hesitantly, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us, but we can't impose on you forever. We need to start thinking about our next steps." Karim nodded, understanding her concern. "I've been giving that some thought," he replied, "and I have a proposition for you, for all of you." He outlined his plan. Villa Montserrat, once a symbol of corruption and secrecy, would be transformed into a center for child welfare and education. The mansion that had hidden dark secrets for so long would now become a beacon of hope for Barcelona's most vulnerable children. "I want you to help me run it, Sofia," Karim continued, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. "Your experience as an accountant, combined with your unwavering integrity, makes you the perfect person to oversee this project. We'll ensure that every donation, every resource is used to genuinely improve children's lives." Sofia's eyes filled with tears of gratitude and hope. "It's perfect," she whispered, "a chance to turn all that pain into something beautiful." Isabella, who had been listening intently, piped up, "Can I help too?" Maybe I could read stories to the little kids." Karim grinned, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Of course you can. In fact, I think you and Marco will be our most important advisors. Who better to tell us what children really need?" As they discussed the details of the project, Karim felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. His success in real estate had brought him wealth and influence, but this was something truly meaningful. The transformation of Villa Montserrat became a symbol of Barcelona's wider renewal. As the old corridors were filled with the laughter of children and the warmth of compassion, the city itself seemed to heal. Corruption would always exist, but now there was a strong counterforce, a reminder of what could be achieved when people stood up for what was right. Karim's business acumen, combined with Sofia's meticulous oversight, ensured that the center flourished. Children who had once faced bleak futures found hope, education, and support within the mansion's welcoming walls. Isabella, true to her word, became a favorite among the younger children, her storytelling sessions always packed with eager listeners. As for Ricardo and Carmen, they remained close allies and friends. Ricardo's investigative skills were put to use vetting potential donors and partners, ensuring the center remained free from any hint of impropriety. Carmen became a beloved figure, sharing her vast knowledge of Barcelona's history with the children, turning lessons into exciting adventures through time. 1 year after the center's opening, Karim stood in what had once been the mansion's hidden room. Now transformed into a bright, cheerful library, it bore no resemblance to the dark, secretive space it had once been. As he watched Sofia guide a group of children through a reading exercise, he felt a profound sense of contentment. A tug on his sleeve drew his attention downward. Marco, now a toddler full of energy and curiosity, raised his arms in a silent request to be picked up. As Karim obliged, lifting the boy onto his hip, he realized how much his life had changed. From a driven businessman focused solely on the next deal, he had become part of something larger. A family, a community, a force for good. Sofia caught his eye across the room and smiled warmly. In that moment, Karim knew that while the path ahead might not always be easy, it would always be worthwhile. Villa Montserrat, once a nexus of darkness, had become a lighthouse of hope. And in its transformation, Karim had found not just redemption for the mansion, but for himself as well. As the sun set over Barcelona, casting a golden glow through the library windows, Karim felt a profound sense of peace. The shadows of the past had been banished, and the future, for the Martinez family, for the children of Barcelona, and for Karim himself, was brighter than ever before. 5 years had passed since the fateful summer that changed everything. Villa Montserrat, once a silent keeper of dark secrets, now stood as a beacon of hope in Barcelona's landscape. The laughter of children echoed through its halls, a stark contrast to the hushed whispers of its shadowy past. Karim stood on the mansion's restored balcony, overlooking the vibrant gardens where dozens of children played. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Each room that once held secrets now nurtured dreams. Every corner that once witnessed corruption now fostered creativity and learning. Sophia appeared beside him, a gentle smile on her face. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Karim chuckled softly. "Just marveling at how far we've come. Did you ever imagine 5 years ago that this would be our reality?" Sophia shook her head, her eyes misty with emotion. "Never. But I'm grateful every day that it is." Their conversation was interrupted by the excited shouts of Isabella, now a poised teenager, as she led a group of younger children in a game. Marco, no longer a baby, but a lively young boy, trailed after his sister, determined to keep up. The center had flourished beyond their wildest dreams. It had become more than just a safe haven for vulnerable children. It was a model for similar initiatives across Spain and beyond. Delegations from other cities and countries frequently visited, eager to learn from their success. Ricardo, who had become the center's head of security and community outreach, approached with a tablet in hand. "The new literacy program is showing amazing results," he reported enthusiastically. "Reading scores are up across all age groups." Carmen, now a beloved figure known affectionately as Abuela Carmen to all the children, joined them. "And you should see the history projects the older kids are working on," she added proudly. "They're connecting Barcelona's past to its present in ways I never imagined." As they discussed the center's ongoing projects and future plans, Karim felt a familiar warmth in his chest. This was so much more than he had ever achieved in his previous life as a real estate tycoon. Here, success wasn't measured in profits or property values, but in changed lives and renewed hope. The day's highlight was the annual Future Leaders presentation, where the older children shared their visions for making the world a better place. As Karim sat in the audience, listening to these young voices full of passion and determination, he realized that Villa Montserrat's true legacy was unfolding before his eyes. One presenter, a girl named Lucia who had arrived at the center 3 years ago, silent and withdrawn, now stood confidently before the crowd. "Villa Montserrat taught me that our past doesn't define our future," she declared. "It showed me that even the darkest places can be filled with light if we have the courage to shine it." Karim felt Sophia's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. They exchanged a look of pride and shared purpose. This was why they had fought so hard, risked so much, not just to expose the wrongs of the past, but to build a brighter future. As the presentation concluded and the children mingled with the attendees, Karim found himself approached by a familiar face, the police chief who had helped bring down Al-Rashid's network. "Now you've done something remarkable here, Mr. Al-Rahman," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "You didn't just expose corruption, you've created a force to prevent it in the future." Later that evening, as the sun set over Barcelona, casting the city in a warm golden glow, Karim gathered with Sofia, Isabella, Marco, Ricardo, and Carmen for a quiet dinner on the mansion's terrace. As they shared stories and laughter, Karim looked around at these people who had become his family in all but blood. Isabella, her eyes shining with excitement, spoke of her plans to study law, inspired by the fight for justice she had witnessed. Marco proudly showed off the story he had written, a tale of bravery and redemption that touched them all deeply. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Karim raised his glass in a toast. "To Villa Montserrat," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "May it always stand as a reminder that light can overcome darkness, that secrets can give way to truth, and that even the most unexpected journeys can lead us to where we truly belong." The glasses clinked together, a joyful sound ringing out into the night. Villa Montserrat, once a symbol of Barcelona's hidden corruption, now stood as a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and change. Its walls, which had once contained whispers of deceit, now echoed with the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As Karim looked out over the city he had come to love, he knew that his greatest achievement wasn't in the buildings he had developed or the fortunes he had made. It was in the lives touched, the futures brightened, and the legacy of hope that would continue long after he was gone. Villa Montserrat's story had come full circle, from darkness to light, from secrets to openness, from corruption to compassion, and in that transformation, Karim, Sophia, and all those whose lives had been entwined in this remarkable journey had found not just redemption, but a true home. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the tale of Karim, Sophia, and Villa Montserrat has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexities of life. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your comments.